Hello and welcome to everyone to another episode of Gupshup with Gill. Today I have someone with me who's known to finish off her articles in a way people compare MS Dhoni to finish off matches. It's also a privilege to host her today because when I started this series, I always wanted her to be here, and I wanted a lot of women representation. I struggled to do that in the previous episode so far with only getting one female guest, which was Karnia ma'am, but I'm happy to bring a second women guest who, a lot of people, like I said, would say that finishes off articles like no one else. Happy to introduce Ms. Sharda Ugra on the show today. Welcome, ma'am. Hopefully you enjoy this chat, and hopefully there's a lot to talk about and a lot to share about from your perspective of writing, journalism, life, etc., etc. I'm sure you have a lot to add.
Hi, Gurkira. Thank you so much for having me on the program. And on your podcast. Don't call me ma'am. I say this to everybody. It's like my middle name. Don't call me ma'am. People struggle with it, but yeah, please call me ma'am. Call me Sharda. Let's start off the conversation informally.
I try to, but like Vijay sir also, like it was the case with Vijay sir. You've been longer in the field of journalism than what my age is. So, there's a lot of subconscious hindrance to call you from the first name. You've been in the field of journalism since '89, if I'm not wrong. And I was born in '96, so you can understand where I'm coming from. So I'll try to call you by first name. Hopefully by the end of the show that happens, but yeah, I'll take a note. So, like I asked with everyone who's on the show, what was your first memory, or, how has been your journey coming into the field of sports journalism? Did you always want to be a sports journalist, or, you wanted to be a sports person first and then sports journalism happened?
I was a very average athlete to start with. So I had no ambitions of being a sports person at all. But what I did enjoy was playing sport, which I did when I was young, very long ago. And what I also enjoyed was reading and watching and writing to start with, and then writing about sport. I did not think that it would be possible for me to break into the field, but I really, really loved reading good writing about sport from the time when I was young. My earliest memory of sport per se is two things. I remember seeing, I don't know whether it was live or it was the clips of Nadia Comaneci's Perfect 10, at the 76 Olympics, right? And so so I would have been about 8 at the time, but I remember seeing that. And I remember the Pakistani team coming to tour India in 1979. I remember watching those matches on television as well. So those are the two memories, and I always wanted to be involved. I was always into sport. I grew up in a part of the city where there was access to playing fields. We had people of our age, older, younger boys that you played alongside. You played badminton, you played cricket, you played football. You didn't have enough hockey sticks to play hockey, but you tried. You swam, cycling. So all of that was there. That sort of activity and outdoors was part of the life, and I loved reading about it as well. And great reader for anything that was there that was worth reading. So I loved words and I loved sport, and that was the two things that have brought me this far.
While you were, becoming a journalist, while you were at St. Xavier's and taking up journalism, who were your heroes? Like, who were the people you looked up to while wanting to become a journalist? Any particular writer that you always look forward to reading, or any particular journalist who you always, liked their way of reporting?
See, at that time, all the reading and the information that you got was from newspapers, periodicals, and you had, I remember reading Ted Cobbett very early. I remember reading Mike Coward at some point in time. I remember reading Peter Roebuck, who was a player at the time. I remember reading little bits of him as well. And those are the ones that stayed in my mind. When I was just sort of young and kind of coming into journalism, coming to college, you had all kinds of bylines, John Arlott, John Woodcock, and it was all English or Australian or whatever. Raju Barton, K.N. Prabhu was the big name for us to sort of try and read that he wrote with so much affection and almost a sense of romance about that time. A.F.S. Talyar Khan used to write columns in Midday where I worked initially, and he was acerbic and cutting, and I thought he was very strict, and I said, what is this and all that, and now I find myself doing the same thing, grumbling and shouting at people. So it was all that sort of mix that there was. And what you did notice was the absence of a female voice in there, So it's not that you knew that they were not, you heard a little bit, you knew about Chandra Naidu, had heard that she was doing commentary, CK Naidu's daughter. And so you knew that, but you knew that there were not women there, and you found it strange. And you said, why can't there be women? That was the thing. But it wasn't done in a revolutionary kind of a way, or it's just that you wanted to be there. You know, you wanted to be part of it. You wanted to share about what was happening. So, and all Raju Bharatan used to write enormously in the Illustrated Weekly of India. He wrote on film, he wrote on cricket, he wrote again very sharp pieces on the Kapil and Gavaskar scandals at the time. So I remember reading a lot of that stuff. I remember reading that byline particularly. And when I met him and KN Prabhu, I was like stupefied, you know, like speechless almost. So I don't know whether you'd say they're heroes or whatever, but you just remembered their names and you knew their voices and they knew what they brought to you as a reader, what they gave to you when you read what they wrote.
Now, I'm coming to another question, which I'm sure you must have been asked 1,000 times, and it's also a cliched question, but it's a question without the interview cannot be completed, or the conversation cannot be completed. I think your smile is is giving away what the question is going to be. But 30 sports journalism is still a male-oriented field in many ways. You don't see that much representation yet. So I can't imagine how difficult would it have been for you 30 years back when, like you yourself said, that there wasn't a female voice. So, just take us through a few of those struggles or experiences where, it was pointed out to you in some way or the other that, oh, you're probably in the wrong field or this field is not for you. Any such examples or anecdotes?
Yeah, I did get asked that a lot in many ways, and I had there were sort of mixed responses. A lot of the younger people of my age, they were all right because I was working for a city paper. They saw the byline, they saw what I wrote. A lot of one generation, two generations older were a little bit resentful. They were a little bit cold in that sense. They didn't speak to you at all. You sat in the press box for days on end, matches on end, seasons on end, and they didn't say a word. But there was also slightly older people, I remember, and like, for example, Ayaz, who was a senior at the time, he was a big star in the profession because of Sports Week. He was wonderful. Ayaz Memon was just very gracious. I was at a press conference somewhere and I was sitting by myself. He said, why are you sitting and eating alone? And he brought his plate and he sat down and had lunch or whatever it was with me. Cecil Hendricks, and they were all these old school writers who were quite charming in their way and saying, they're saying, oh, we are so happy to see a woman in the press conference or whatever. They're just happy that you are there as a reporter. Aren't you having a drink? I said, no, I don't drink. What kind of a reporter are you if you don't drink? So it was that sort of informality and almost conviviality that they shared with you. So it was a mixed experience. You got a little bit of a mean kind of a response from some people elsewhere. Officials strangely were quite accommodating and quite understanding, and they were like, okay, you have come from your paper, okay, fine, you can do this, you can sit here, you can do this, and like, don't create hassle and problem. I remember once, so there are always, with all women journalists will tell you, Manuja Virappa is a champion of rights for women in the press box, much more than we were. I remember, and so there's the shortage of toilets. Where do you go to the toilet at a game? So, and it sounds so crazy to be complaining about toilets, but cricket takes a long time. All cricket matches take ages, and you inevitably say, "Can I go to where is the toilet?" And they just look at you in this absolute stupefaction, like, "What? You have to go to the toilet? How inconsiderate of you, So you had those kind of stories, but my thing was that because my office environment was so warm and generous and sharing in midday, particularly when I started out, that you never felt that you were, I know people who have had very, very unfortunate experiences in larger organizations, women particularly. But growing up as a journalist in midday, I was never made to feel awkward being there, representing them out in the public. It was always very much, "Arey, we have got a story, arey, great story you have done, arey, we missed this." It was that kind of thing. You were part of this team of very young people. And so you felt very secure. When you went out there, you felt secure because you had not just the backing of your editor, you also had the backing of the management, which is a very young management. Mr. Khalid Ansari's son, Tariq Ansari, he had taken over. He must have been in his early 30s or late 20s or something like that. So he was also very sort of cool about how we dealt with him, how we interacted with him. We were like shouting, and it was a great office to grow up in. I mean, Prajwal also joined midday. That was her first job as well. And she said, I thought the world was like that the working world was like that. Because of midday, it was such a fun place to be in, and everyone was there and everyone was with you. And of course, then she went out and had nightmare experiences when she did. You should get her on one of your programs, on your podcast. She'll tell you fantastic stories and horrible stories altogether about tennis writing and tennis and everything. And so it gave you a lot of security coming from midday. They sent you everywhere. They looked after you. They were not mean. There was no ego in that midday newsroom. So that made a huge difference to the way you approach the world and what you thought of yourself. So people outside can say whatever they want. They won't get the story that you've got. You've beaten them to the story. You've given a better report. You've done a different story. And in your office anyway, the people that are paying you your salary, they appreciate what you do. So you had that. It was that balance that worked fantastically for particularly starting out for me. And it gave you a lot of confidence going ahead, in many ways. So I'm always grateful to midday.
There are a few things you pointed out. One about the washrooms at Indian stadiums. I wouldn't say that they are discriminatory, because if you've probably been to a lot more Indian stadiums than I have.
Universally bad.
Yeah, they're universally bad, and I don't think even spectators or anyone can use it. It's something that is never on the top of the priorities for the administrators, which is why I feel that a lot of times spectators don't come to the stadiums is because of the facilities. And Rahul Dravid had mentioned it brilliantly and beautifully in the Bradman oration back in 2011, that you have to make sure that the biggest stakeholder in the game is comfortable coming to the stadiums with the bucket seats and the washrooms. I don't think so. That is why I said I don't think that was discriminatory. They are universally bad. The other thing you told me, you said about inviting.
But at least there was a toilet, and gents can go and stand against a wall. What do women do? Remember that.
That is there. No, I'm just taking a dig at Indian stadiums. I'm not saying that what you're saying is not a concern. It's definitely a concern with all measure, for sure. The other thing which you mentioned about getting someone on the show, me getting people on the show is dependent upon people like you who will give a nice word and tell them. So absolutely, as long as you're happy, I'm sure I'll be able to get them. The other thing about you mentioning midday, I think what you mentioned about the office providing a good environment and there was always criticism outside, I think maybe it's fair to say that it gave a balance of criticism as well as support, because it told you that someone's there to back you up, but there were enough naysayers for you to keep pushing hard, keep improving every day, and making a place for yourself in the industry of journalism or print media. So
I mean, I don't think I owe them any gratitude for being mean, all the naysayers or whatever that they were. I don't think I owe them anything in that sense, because they were quite exclusionary to start with. People wrote, someone who didn't have the guts to put his name in an article wrote an article saying that, all these women journalists that are there, they don't know anything about the sport. They only are very good at writing. And see, we are reporters. If you don't write well, what is the point of us knowing the game inside out if we can't tell people what's happened? So there was that whole approach that was there. So I felt myself, I owed my loyalty and my effort and everything that I did to the organization that employed me and people whom I worked for. I worked for them. I didn't work to prove anybody else right, wrong, different, whatever it was, So I didn't look at it in any way that, I have to gain acceptance from that world. I was not interested in gaining acceptance from that world at all. I had no desire to be one of the boys. I had no desire to be, I'm jumping up and down, sorry about that. It's a very bad habit. I had no ambition to fit in. I genuinely did. So I was happy with the environment that was, and I was constantly looking at myself to do better because I wanted to do better. Like I keep saying that it's almost like you felt that you were carrying the full boja of womanhood because you're a female sports journalist in that sense. But I didn't want to prove myself to anybody or anything. I was like this. I was like in a state of blinkers. I literally paid no attention to what everyone said around me, as long as the people I was working for were happy and satisfied with what I was doing and or wanted me to do better and told me and whatever. I had no desire to fit into anything in the outside world.
So
With the outside.
that is such an important life lesson and a thing to say, that you didn't have any pressure to fit in. Because what I feel is, and I think when I can say it, I can say it for other fans as well who follow sport. Because now a lot of journalism is reduced to probably breaking a rumor on Twitter, not even a story or an interview, but breaking a rumor on Twitter has become far more important for a lot of journalists. And I think a lot of them who can write well also, because they want to gain some clout, they tend to indulge in that habit. What do you make of it? And while you answer this, I also want to know from you, because a lot of people said that they wanted to know this from you. Are you ever going to join Twitter, or you already have a Twitter account, and it's something that people don't know? Because there's a rumor that even Sid Monga of Cricinfo is there on Twitter, but no one knows his account. So what is it?
Yeah.
You want to stay away from it, or you operate
No,
under?
I am on Twitter. I have a Twitter account, but like I always say when I'm asked, is that Twitter works for me as a news service. I don't work for Twitter to give them my opinion. When I have to give my opinion, I'll write it out and send it to wherever it's being published. I don't have to say everything that I want to say on Twitter. I don't have to respond to everything. Twitter is a news service for me. I follow news on Twitter. So I am very much there. I have an account, but rest assured, I haven't given a single tweet. I haven't made any comment. You will not find me anywhere. I don't know about Monga, about Sid Monga's account. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I mean, it's because as a news source, often Twitter is very useful, right? But as a place of people just saying all kinds of things, and for free me gali, I don't want to take for nothing. So I'm just like, sorry. You find that you are angry with what I say or not, please write a letter to editor, write a letter in whatever. I am not interested in having a conversation with you about this. I mean, I'll have a conversation with anybody, but people who are like the guy who wrote that anonymous piece, you don't have the guts to put your name. How can you don't have a name? How can you have an argument? Forget it. So it's like that. So and Twitter is a toxic space also. It's a toxic and a terrible space for women. And I have great admiration for everyone who's still there fighting the good fight on Twitter. And standing up, I mean, not sports related, but political and all the rest of it, and it's just, and what I also have a problem with Twitter is that they're I can rant now for 45 minutes. I'll just one sentence. They're very selective about whom they choose to punish on Twitter and how. And I find that absolutely abominable and absolutely disgusting. And I will not be a part of their feeding chain or whatever it's called on there, whatever. I'm not going to be a part of that business. You are giving me news, you give me news. I'm not saying anything. So that is my social media sort of a response to social media. As Lady Gaga said, what? Twitter is the toilet of social media. Something like that she said. Yeah, it was great. I loved it. I can check. It's all Lady Gaga. All right. I remember she said this in public.
There are definitely a lot of such tweets where you could say it's toilet of social media, conspiracy theories. But what do you have to say about when verified journalists who've been there in the game for so long, who've been there in the profession for so long, propagate these conspiracy theories? How do you feel? Because you are also, at the end of the day, you are also from the same community, and these are also people who represent your community in a way. So
yes,
how does it feel to see people who don't uphold what you can probably say are the ethics of journalism, and then indulge in something which is anything but journalism? How does it feel to
it's
someone
terrible.
like you who's been
It
for
feels
30 years?
terrible. I mean, it just feels terrible. You feel like you are being that someone is letting down your team almost, and I think it's, and particularly what's happened in cricket journalism, that it's become this popularity generation. I have to have so many followers, and and also organizations put pressure on young journalists to do this. Organizations are as much behind this whole game of likes and retweets and whatever and everything. And I keep telling people that I would really struggle as a 20-year-old going, the 20-year-old that I was would really struggle in this environment. I don't think I would be able to get through in a profession like this. I would just have to retreat to the copy desk or library or something like that, because I really would have struggled. I find it very disappointing when that happens, when games are played. But I mean, to be fair, there was always this kind of engagement that was going on through news copy. You saw it conflicting through, you find it there. Somebody speaking on behalf of this player, somebody speaking on behalf of that player. But what's happened now on Twitter is that it's 24/7. It's non-stop. It's always there. It's always someone fighting for someone, fighting for someone. It's very disappointing when that happens. You see a lot of cricket journalism, it just gets reduced to stenography when it comes to BCCI related things or when it comes to player cause related things. I mean, a lot of us were also part of the cycle of players giving you information and telling you things, and then you grow up and you discover and say, this is rubbish, this is nonsense. But if you don't grow up out of that, then it just becomes, it's purposeless. Then you're not a journalist. Then you're just what is that word that I'm looking for? You're definitely not, you're definitely not a journalist. You're just can you use bad language in your?
Sure. I mean, depends on what kind
I mean,
of.
you're just a shit stirrer. You're just stirring up shit the whole time. You know, you're just a shit stirrer. And that's not, journalism is not about shit stirring. Journalism is about calling truth to power, as they say, in some way, in whichever way that you can. So if you're just going to be a shit stirrer, then, you know, just join a Nata company. What can I say? Yeah.
Now, like you've rightly spoken against it, but there are a few people or few views which are sort of an apologist point of view, or a view which sort of justifies what happened. So who do you put more blame on? Do you put the blame on people who consume such content, or do you put the blame back on those people who are propagating such content? Because there's obviously a, what do you can call it? You can obviously call it a circle, because somewhere I think those who are saying that people also consume it are right, because we also want masala and gossip in everything that
Yeah.
we consume in our life. So where do you think a line needs to be drawn?
You would want the, if you're calling yourself a journalist, if you represent the media. Now, the thing is, you know, we always say, oh, audio visual media and reporting and print media and all the rest of it. If you're a journalist, there has to be a certain sort of respect for facts. There has to be a certain respect for perspective and proportion. And there has to be a certain less quantity of doing chaplusi. You know, so chaplusi is not journalism. You know, chaplusi is chaplusi, and you'll see it mostly it'll reflect itself very, very actively in social media. You see it everywhere. He's a great human being. This is like some new designation. Slow left arm bowler. What is the other thing? Slow left arm bowler, right hand bat, and great human being. There is no such thing as great human being category. Yeah, stop it. You know, all sportsmen, all of us are flawed people. We all have our thing. I mean, you can say, when you're 25 years old, you can say that and be swept away by some personality or whatever. But when you're 45 years, you are a little bit more. You must have a little bit more of a. I mean, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to say, oh, people should not consume. That's very sort of almost righteous and whatever.
Utopian.
You should have. Yeah, you should have a certain sense of responsibility as to what you're doing. And if you don't, then you will just be, you know, found out for being whatever, you know. I mean, yeah, don't if you're not a fan club is a fan club. I accept it. It's great. You know, fan clubs are fantastic things. But a journalist is not part of a fan club. Should not be. A seasoned journalist 100% should not be. You know, a young reporter, you can say, okay, all right, you're in your first 10 years of work. But these things happen. All of us sort of go through this thing. But when you're some 45 years old, you should not be doing this.
You know, you've also answered what I was going to ask next, because obviously, so sport is a field where even if you are a journalist, you need to enjoy it. You need to have those emotions which the fans have. Else, I think it would be very difficult to be in the field of sports journalism, because people don't understand this. But, you know, when you are a sports journalist, you are working on weekends, you're probably working on holidays, because that is when the most of sporting action happens. So, you know, I was just going to ask you that how difficult can it be for a journalist to, you know, separate the fan out of himself or herself, and then probably write a critical piece for any cricketer or, you know, any sort of a sports person. So you've pretty much answered it, that it's something that the job requires anyway for you to do it.
Yeah, and I think it comes naturally with age. It comes naturally with growing into the profession in that sense, you know. So what I wrote when I was 20 is not what I write when I'm 50 or 40. You know, it's different. It changes. You grow. You understand what's happening. And I would say that a whole lot of younger journalists that are there now, because particularly in India, because access to cricket has completely been cut off. Cricketers, which is the big number one sport in the country. And therefore, you are getting a lot more measured reportage and a response to things that are there. Where there is sort of reasonable quality journalism, you are getting a much more measured response from younger people. Our generation, because we were not hanging out with with cricketers or the players as well, but there was access to it. You could call them, you could check, you could double check. They could plant a story on you and you wouldn't tell until after 5 days ago. You say, "Yeah, what is this? I fell for that." That now it's media management and you have to send questions in advance and you have to do all that other stuff. So maybe it's a good side to look at as well. I think it does require you. What happens with a lot of what's happened with me, I'm not speaking for everybody, is that after some time you get very unemotional when you're watching particularly cricket. You can watch India lose in a way that is absolutely without any, your pulse rate is not good. I can watch India-Pakistan match without my pulse rate increasing beyond its normal resting rate. I can watch it and say, enjoy certain segments of it. But there will be times when something in sport will tap that thing into you and you'll jump out of your seat. It doesn't happen a lot of times, but it does happen. It just reminds you that this is why you're in it. This is why you're in this profession. When it comes to being critical of players, I think it's a thing that comes with age as well. You're not taking a personal panga with them for any reason. It's just that because it's a fact, it's in front of you. They get offended. They call you. They say, "I thought you would understand," and whatever and all that. And you say, "Yeah, but what to do?" And you kind of have that little bit of a balance. But that's because you had a two-way communication going at the time, which now is not there. So it's a mixed bag in that sense. But I still enjoy watching sport. I still enjoy writing about it. I still enjoy it when we win. I mean, I was crushed when the Indian women's hockey team lost its bronze medal match. I mean, really, really disappointed. But at the same time, as a reporter, if you are going to be working on that game and on that day, you have a segment in your brain that is working. And you have a segment in your brain that is emotionally responding to it, but your working brain is always working. It has to be working. It has to be taking notes. It has to be making observations. And so that's the way I sort of function. So you have left brain, right brain, chal raha hai, but your working brain has to be working. Your reporter sense has to be switched on. If you're not working, then you can throw cushions and you can break glasses and whatever else you want. But if you're working, your working side is switched on.
You mentioned the Indian women's hockey team, and after their campaign in Tokyo, you had written a piece which I particularly liked, from Betiyan to Badasses, and I could relate to it because I have also worked with Hockey India in some capacity. But there was some critic of it, and that critic was that the players who go and play in the Olympics, whether they be male or female, they are professionals. So to use the exact word, to use psychobabble and use words like body language, intent, spirit, etc., sort of takes the credit away from their abilities as a sports person and doesn't tell the true story. It's probably done to sell the piece. Was the criticism was. So where do you stand on it? Do you think sometimes as writers or journalists, people do tend to indulge in this psychobabble a lot, wherein another example of that is how people confuse Virat Kohli's body language as aggression. Well, if someone who's followed the game closely would know that he's not as much of an aggressive captain as many articles would make it out to be. So where do you stand on the usage of these terms which can come into a psychobabble, or are something which
I mean, I'm trying to understand. Yeah, I'm trying to understand what the meaning of psychobabble is, because psychobabble is if I start using words like he was attentively, he was emotionally detached from the situation, or if he was emotionally too invested. Psychobabble is like mind reading. Yeah. And I don't think in that piece I was reading the mind of any of the players. I was in the piece which I am very what is the word I can use? I mean, when this is being said, I want to know the example of psychobabble first of all, and I want to know on what basis the word intent is a noun, right? Isn't it a noun? Intent is a noun. Adjective. No, adjective is good intent, bad intent. Intent is noun.
Okay.
है ना?
Okay.
Or intention is also noun, evil intention, etc. And what is the use of the other? Body language. Body language is it may be seen as psychobabble, but it is a field of psychoscience in itself as to how people communicate. It's this thing there to say. And team spirit, yeah, you can say, you can make the argument that team spirit works best when teams are winning. You know, it's a construct that is created when teams are winning by reporters or by whatever. But the point is that it translates itself into action on the field. It translates itself into the results that you see, which is what you see there. So I don't understand what that discussion was about. To sell the piece, I mean, the whole thing is, we are not trying to sell pieces. We are not sitting in a stall trying to sell our pieces for 50 bucks and saying, please read it. What we are trying to do in that piece, and what I was trying to do is tell people what the women of those hockey, what the women were like, what they had done to get to that position where they did, where they made for the first time India's Olympic history, they made the semifinals. So that's what it was. You're not here to sell pieces like you sell biscuits. You're not here to advertise your piece. You can say that there is a time that you can emotionally try and manipulate your reader. But why would you emotionally manipulate your reader if you yourself are emotionally responding to what you see in front of you? You're not manipulating, you're just replicating what your emotion is on paper. And I know we had this little chat about this before that. I said, you know, did the person who talked about this piece, was it a man or a woman who responded in this manner? And I'm saying that for the women's hockey team to be where they were at that point in time is a completely different situation for all those women than it is for the men's hockey team. It is not the same story. And for a long time, what people tend to do is to look at female athletes as look at India's female athletes as, okay, you're a female athlete. No, you're an Indian woman who's an athlete. It's not the same thing as just being a female athlete. To be an Indian woman and to use your body to express itself or to show your skill is a huge thing. It is completely different from what happens with male athletes. It's completely different from their life experience, their social experience around it. I mean, when people say these things, they are emotionally trying to sell their piece. Did you know, for example, that there are parts of the country where women are told when they go for training in the morning, why are you wearing a round neck t-shirt? You should wear a collar neck t-shirt. So please don't try and tell me that we are trying to sell pieces. You know, when you're telling a female's life story in sport in a way as truthful to her experience as possible, no one's trying to sell it. We're just telling you facts. If you can't handle those facts, that's not our issue. You know, so that is what I'm trying to say. And I'm sort of getting incensed at the fact that someone can look at it and call it psychobabble. Well, so what happens to the women is psychobabble. I mean, what are you trying to, you know, what is the to say that a woman goes through this?
What you said is something which even Viren Raskina, who was on air at that point of time, said. I think his wife actually released that video where he spoke that when Indian women athletes make it to the world stage, they are not just competing against sporting skills, they are competing against the society, because some of them can't use mobile phones, some of them are not allowed to wear jeans, some of them are not allowed to play, some of them are not allowed to, you know, have any choice or agency of their own. So from that point of view, I think
agency, that's absolutely the right word, agency. It is very tough for a female athlete to have agency in this country. Why are there fights going on at the moment? Manika Batra versus Table Tennis Federation, Vinesh Fogart versus Wrestling Federation. What is going on there? You know, what can you not see what is going on there? Is it not obvious to the external eye? So what was Viren trying to do? Sell his broadcast?
Yeah, I mean,
that's all I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he didn't need to, because everyone's watching that anyway. So you're right from
Exactly.
that point of view. Now, continuing on similar lines, you know, you've also, apart from, you know, writing on sport, you've also spoken of these issues where you've talked about your singlehood as well, and you've spoken of how, you know, probably Indian women need to have a lot more freedom than they have right now. And you know, you've always tried and, you know, replicate that in your work as well, is something what I feel. Now, what I want to know from you is that freedom something which is a product of, you know, how you've worked in these 3 years of your professional life, or is that freedom something which, you know, you could say is probably due to how you know, your parents brought you up, or it's a product of both the things? So, you know, I want to know from you, like, because this is something which a lot of people, I also personally feel that, you perhaps seem to have a lot more freedom in terms of your writing also, as opposed to many other writers. So it's because that you've been in the profession for so long, or it's just because you believe in what you feel and you
I think
believe in expressing it completely.
I think experience is what has given me that sort of freedom again. I think the experience that gives you, I think it's age as well, connects with experience, where you think like, yeah, I've been now, I'm so old now, I am auntie age. I keep saying, I'm auntie ho gayi hu, I'm like reached auntie level, I'm like furniture. So I can say what I want. And people just say, oh, it's a crazy old back talking. I say, let them say it. It doesn't matter. But if it has to be said, it has to be said. A lot of this has to do with the fact that of my upbringing as well. I mean, my parents never stopped me from doing anything that I wanted. They were a bit sort of alarmed as to when I went the single way, as to how long is this going to matter and all, like I wrote in that piece in Scroll. And now it's fine, and so you realize how privileged and how fortunate you are to be in that situation, to not be given all these, to not have threats made about how you should live. And that is a rare thing that I am just absolutely blessed. And everything else that comes with it has come with experience. It has just come with the time you spend in the field, your ability to spot bad language alert again, bullshit when it's been communicated. So it's that, and to be able to give context and patterns and see patterns in what's happening. So it's that. And a lot of the times, a lot of the stories are repeating themselves as well. So you should be able to call it and see it as it is. So it's that as well. But very, very fortunate, very, very lucky and privileged. I know, I accept it, to be in this position.
It's a very honest, I'd say, confession in the way that you say that there's a privilege, because sometimes we just don't acknowledge it, because to use a word of Hindi or Urdu, I don't know if it's Urdu or Hindi, but there's बहुत सारी बंदिशें होती हैं female in the average life of a female in India. So it's great that you acknowledge it and you speak about
Absolutely.
it. Now you mentioned about the experience part as well. From there the freedom comes. So how can someone who's entering into the field of journalism, is a newbie or is probably a 24 or a 25-year-old, can ensure that he or she is able to keep that freedom of thought, of expression, to the best way possible, or to the maximum way possible? Do you think can journalists themselves contribute to it, or do you think it's controlled by factors which are much bigger than all of us?
A lot of the time it is controlled by factors, say with young journalists working in big organizations. I think what young journalists should do is literally not lose their sense of what is fair and what is unfair, to understand that. It doesn't mean that you write it, express it, you're like shouting and ranting the whole time, but it's there, it's there in the back of your head. To get good at what you do, to keep perfecting what you do, to try and aim to be accurate and to be fair is your basic starting point at which you should work. I mean, you would want a lot. What has happened to a lot of journalists is that they've been let down by very poor editors in the past, sports editors, and I'm sure editors across, they've been let down. So there's a whole generation that has spent its time kind of wondering about, saying, oh, who should I please, who should I suck up to, who should I, that kind of thing that's there, which official should I listen to. If your editor is bad, your progress as a journalist in terms of what you print will be different to what your progress as a journalist may be internally. Because if you have a longer career, you're able to see things more. You're able to, if you love sport, stick with it, because you're able to see things more, and you'll find a place and an outlet for what you feel to be written. There are, at the moment, there are sort of conditions about what you can write in larger publications, what you can write about, who you can, I mean, we are not even talking about sports. In politics, you've seen what's happening in politics. You've seen the takeover of the mainstream media, for example. That has been very disappointing in terms of what it should be. So like sports is like, I mean, what's the worst that we can do? Yeah, we can say something good about a BCCI official, or be on Virat Kohli's side, and in the Virat Kohli versus Rohit Sharma battle, or Ashwin versus Jadeja, whatever debate that is there, that's the worst that we can do. What's happening at the political level is just, it's life it's sort of democracy destroying, if I can use a dramatic phrase. So you've seen that there. I think it's what for young journalists, sports journalists particularly, the only field I kind of know, is to say pick your battles. Don't fight for everything. Pick your battles and what you're going to fight about. And the longer you're in it, the longer the longevity of your career will give you experience, will give you wisdom, will give you a background information. It'll help you see patterns. And when your time will come, in that sense, because it will come. Because to speak freely is not as common as it should be,
You've what you've said is something that builds up perfectly to the next question that I want to ask. Because what I've always seen in your pieces is that there's always a touch upon the outside reality, or what is happening outside of sport. You do tend to do that, wherein you will bring in equivalences from what is happening in the society by and large. So you truly don't, I think, believe in separating the sport from society, while many do. So why do you think so? I asked this something to I asked this question to any journalist or any writer who's there on my show, that what are your particular views on separating the sport and society? I don't think you do it, but why do you not do it, or why do you not buy that sports and society should be separate?
Because they can't be separate. Sportsmen come from society. Sportsmen belong to society. They come from it. What you see on the sports field is a reflection of changes that have happened or taken place in the country behind it, particularly in India. To say that sport and society should be separate at this time, there could not be a completely wrong time to say this, because you're seeing what's happening with reference to Take a Knee, Black Lives Matter, all those kind of things that's there. And with social media, you're seeing the fact that athletes are not saying anything. Very few people talk. It's it's that you get that response. Why aren't they saying they are our heroes? We want them to speak for us. Like when the students at Jamia and JNU got attacked. So it's very hard to say, because if sports people are there on social media trying to gather fans and followers, and they get paid to tweet, and when people of their age, like I say, the students are the age all their fans are, when they have nothing to say about that, it's that, what's happening. So I don't think you can separate sport from society. You can separate a match report from what's happening in the world if you have to write a match report. If you're writing another piece, you can write it differently. So different pieces have to be written in different voices in a way. But you can't separate the fact and say that if someone asks what happened to Vandana Kataria's family, for example, how do you not say that about her? How do you not say that your star player who scored a hat trick against South Africa, her family was given a caste insult, and how this is the society through which she has grown up. This is the struggle that she has had. This is the fight that she has had. So you can't leave it. You can't leave it out beyond a point. I mean, yeah. So I wrote something for the India Forum, which is 3,000 words, which I would want everyone to read, because everything is there in it. Sports, society, politics. It's all in. It's all in. And we've seen how, particularly with reference to Olympic sport, how society responds to it, how our politics responds to it, how power responds to success in sport. So why should sport not call out hypocrisy when it's visible? So. Yeah, I don't think you can separate it. Society is what kept South Africa out of competing internationally until apartheid regime was overthrown. What's going to happen in Afghanistan may have a similar kind of a resonance if there are sanctions against Afghanistan for not allowing women to play. So you can't separate sport from society, because sport comes from there, and how countries play sport is different culturally, how they respond to it, how they respond to different sports. It's part of our fabric, both sport and society. So
interesting. Now you mentioned about how sports administration and power respond to Olympics. Now I know you will have a lot of things to talk about if I ask you this question, but I'll restrict it to what do you think is the biggest problem in Indian sports administration? I know you will have a long list of problems, but if you were to name the one biggest problem in sports administration, and what it would be, if you want, you could probably separate it into cricket and other sports, because cricket is still a privately run body, at least on paper. while other sports bodies are still under the government. So what do you think is the biggest issue with Indian sports administration?
uh, let's keep, like you're saying, let's separate it, cricket from other sports. The Olympic sports that are there, their biggest problem is that the people that run those sports don't put athletes and athletic programs at the center of their actions, their work. So that is our big failing. The athlete or the athlete and the sport is not at the center. Power is at the center of it. Their power, their access to power, how they use it, what they do with the money that they get. It's our money. It's taxpayers' money in any case. That is the fundamental thing. So if you look at across sport, you will find that there will be sports that will not have a proper calendar of events. Unlike cricket, which has a proper structured calendar of events, they don't have a calendar of sustained events. They'll talk about all kinds of things, that we have 400 districts, some program or the other, but it doesn't exist, because we've seen what that looks like in the United States, where you have NCAA, you've got the Indian hockey coach. I'll be very, very quick, others I'll go on. The Indian hockey coach said we have seasonal club competitions, we have weekly club competitions in hockey. Short Marin, the women's hockey coach, which they don't have in India. All they're doing is in camp. They don't have enough quality matches to play against each other. So that is the big failing. In cricket, for example, what's happened now, we're seeing it's like a top-down thing, that everyone's just worrying about the elite athletes that there are. No one is worried that you have these 5,000 people that are in your game, and you have not addressed their, or I've not seen any report about how they have been financially compensated for there being almost, it'll be now 2 seasons of no games. Maybe you'll have games this year, I don't know. So it's that as well. So it's almost like cricket's only concentrating on its creamy layer, and the other sports are not concentrating on anything. They're waiting to jump at, when there's success, they're waiting to jump into the photograph. And if there's a woman athlete who's talking up, they're willing to knock her down. That was me at my most succinct.
Well, but if people want more truth, then I just suggest them that they have to read whatever you write for whichever publication, because you also write for a lot of publications. It's not that you're writing for one particular publication. So then people have to read your articles for that. Not everything can be given in one interview. But moving on, in the future, can we expect you to do a lot more social writing? I know you still do it through sports, but can we look at you going completely or exclusively doing social writing when you talk about issues of the society, or that's something that is not on your plate yet or not on your mind yet?
I mean, it's not my expertise. It's not my experience. It's not what I know well enough. So I would think I'm sort of getting slightly ahead of myself if I try and do it. What I would want to write about is a lot of these kind of things, to talk about what women's sports is about in India. It's only very, very lately that it's kind of batti jal gaye type, that look, a woman athlete is not just in India, is not just like a woman athlete everywhere. Women athletes in India's life is completely different and has to be looked at and re-examined in a different way. So, but about all things on sport, I'm just happy to write. To meet athletes, I love chatting with athletes. I love talking to them and trying to find out what it's about. So it's pretty much the same thing of the same thing, but maybe in a different way. Now, because there has been huge change in Indian sport over the last 10 years. There's been a massive churning, and we are seeing a lot of things that are happening, which are not, in the previous 2 decades before that was completely different. The environment has completely changed.
You'd say people are more aware now, much more aware and much more informed in a way, which is a good thing.
There is a good, because there is access to information. There is access to things. Even athletes have access via the internet for training, for all kinds of things. So there is a lot more access. There's a lot more, I think, approach to listen. There are ways and means that we can get around and use sport as a career. So it's at a very nascent stage, but it's literally like you just seen how it's growing. You've just been able to see that this is the last 10 years has been an enormous jump. 10, 15 years, yeah.
Now, in a 30-year long career, I'm sure you would have met, probably 500, if not more athletes. Any one athlete who you'd say, was resembled or, was extremely similar to what your thought process was, or, any one name. I actually, it would be unfair to restrict it to a name, but a few names that you truly say that inspired you to become a better journalist, a better writer, or whatever. Just a few names that come off the top
I
of
mean,
your head.
they wouldn't be athletes as such. They would more be like journalists who had, some of them are my friends. Mike Marquez, the writer who wrote Anyone But England, and who wrote a fantastic book about the 1996 World Cup called War Minus the Shooting. Definitely him. I've enjoyed meeting all kinds of athletes, and all kinds of people, and who have been who tell extraordinary stories about themselves. So I can't say that but I really enjoyed meeting them. Martina Navratilova, I just completely lost it completely when I met Martina. Ian Thorpe, the swimmer, I enjoyed meeting him with him. I met Arthur Ashe very, very briefly in 1992 in Wimbledon when we were walking back from practice courts to wherever. So I mean, sometimes you do think that that to measure someone's greatness, an athlete's greatness, you should wait over a particular period of time and see what they are. At the height of their career, they get the most attention. But what are they like when they are after? What do they grow into? What do they become when they leave their sport? That's what causes you to maybe have more admiration for them in the sense of how well-rounded they are as people. As athletes, I mean, they're incredible. There's no sort of denying that. I always admired, what I always admired was Tendulkar's enormous focus at his work, at what he did. And when you look at it now, you look back at everything in hindsight, and you just say that he had an extraordinary career because he was so talented and he could have botched it up so easily. But he didn't. He just stuck with it. He was a devotee of his game to a degree that almost covers the entire my career. 25 years he played internationally for 25 years. So that quality and of being every man to everybody around him as well, I find that quite extraordinary. When you look back at it, you come back with more sort of responses, and you come back with more fun stories to tell. And there are many people. It can't be one or two. There's just many of them. I'm very, very attached to that whole generation of cricketers in the first half of the 2000s, first 5-10 years of the 2000s. So I mean, you can't pick one. You can't pick one person as such. But
not as attached to the current generation, you would say, because of
I mean, I don't know them.
lack
I
of
don't know them in that
access.
sense. Yeah. You don't know them as well. You don't know them at all. I enjoy interacting with Abhinav Bindra, who is literally he's a gold standard champion. If you have to have a gold medalist, it has to be gold standard. And now Neeraj Chopra's performance was just like mind-blowing. A very, very bad cliche, but it was just the most extraordinary thing that any Indian has done on a sports field, I think.
Now you've answered the athlete part of the question, where you've mentioned there are a lot of you probably look at the human aspect of the athlete to learn from them, because as athletes they're amazing anyway. But after such a long career, is there still an event or a tournament that you long to cover, or everything that was there in the bucket list which you started out is being fulfilled, and now you look for new things to add in that bucket list to keep sure that you have the same amount of dedication and determination going on into the field? What is it?
I didn't have a bucket list when I started out. I was just grateful to be there, grateful to be at every game, whatever you did. What I would really like to do is go to a World Cup football game, a seniors football game. I watched the under-17 World Cup here. I would love to go to a seniors. Qatar looks like it's an option, but now COVID, who knows? I would love to go and see some football in, say, South America, for example. I would like to go and see a really good badminton final at Istora, which is the big stadium in Jakarta, where apparently it just goes mad when there's a big badminton match there. So I would like to do a couple of those things, but I'm not tired in that sense. I don't feel jaded. I just feel energized every time there is a sports event. The Olympics is the most daunting, most physically demanding sort of sports event. I've done 2 of them. I'm grateful that I did 2. More would be good, but I don't think I'd be able to keep up. But no, I mean, I'm never bored by sport. I'm never tired or jaded about it at all. I'd love to go to watch a good game of sport with a good crowd anywhere, because now post-COVID, you want to go back to an environment where sort of the entire place is just heaving and jumping, and there's excitement in the air, and it's around sport.
what you've answered about the Olympics is quite different what Dr. Sunil Taneja said. He said कि गुरकीरत थकावट तो तब होती है जब मैचेस नहीं होते, जब मैचेस चल रहे होते हैं तो आपको पता है आपने मैच किया, आप दूसरे पे फोकस करो और एक्साइटमेंट अलग होती है. तो I guess it's different for different people. But on that note, I'd just like to conclude that it's been a great conversation. I genuinely enjoyed it. I hope my expressions will tell a story, because at a few times I couldn't control my laughter, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as well, and you found the questions worth asking, and in the same vein that you want questions to be asked by a journalist, not a
No,
journalist.
thanks so much. Thank you so much, Gurkirat. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the questions. I enjoyed the chatter. I enjoyed being accused of trying to sell a story and do psychobabble. I heard many things, but that's a new one. Yeah. But no, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and for putting up with my ranting and raving about various things. But yeah, I mean, a sport is a kind of thing that you can't. It never leaves you tepid. It never leaves you tepid. You're always at a sort of very high temperature of emotion, functioning, everything. So, but thanks so much. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and enjoyed the questions.
Thank you. But I anyway don't mind the rants, because if I'm being completely honest, if you rant or if any guest rants, it gives me more content. So I am not going to mind that ranting. But anyway, the thing is, when people are ranting about something which you can relate to, then it doesn't even feel like a rant, because you feel that someone's actually putting out the same kind of emotions in a better manner. So yeah, I genuinely don't mind those rants. I hope that those rants happen much more often in the writing, so that we have something great to read each and every time. And on that note, I'd like to end the show. And to all those who've watched this and enjoyed it, please do share it and like it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel Gupshup with Gill. And do watch the other episodes of Gupshup with Gill as well, because just like Sharda had her story to tell, there are many others with different stories to tell. And on that note, I remember that at the beginning I said hopefully by the end I'd be able to drop the ma'am. I have done it. So yeah,
I'm
on
so
that,
happy.
I
My
read.
greatest achievement. Yeah, this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all those who joined.
Thank you.